Welcome to another edition of the Basketball Teacher Podcast. Our mission is to bring you discussions on a wide array of topics in the coaching world to grow players on and off the court. You can connect with us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, and also reach us directly through email at basketballteacherpodcast@gmail.com. Now, here's your host, Coach Mike Hernandez.
Welcome back, everybody. Thank you guys so much for joining us here for another episode, wherever in the world you are listening to us from, whatever platform you're listening to us on. Thank you guys so much for the continued support, the continued positive messages, and the feedback that you've been leaving me. Really appreciate that. Keep that coming. Keep sending those emails and messages my way. For today, we're getting into something that I think is really near and dear to so many of you listening and near dear to me. We're going to spend this episode specifically dedicating on the idea of building complete student athletes. And there's going to be a little bit of a twist to this because our guest is going to focus a lot of what he talks about at the middle school level, which I find really fascinating as somebody who coached middle school. I know quite a few of you listening coach at a middle school level. I know quite a few of you who listen who are high school coaches who work very closely with your middle school program. So this is going to be something that I know I'm going to learn a lot from. And as I was joking with my guest, I'm going to be thinking about some of the things I did or maybe didn't do when I was coaching my middle school girls a few years ago. But this will be really fun. So we'll talk some basketball, but we'll also just talk about the complete student athlete picture. And you'll leave this episode with some ideas and some things to reflect on, just like I will. So I'm very happy to be joined today by head basketball coach at White Knoll Middle School. My guest today is Coach John Paul Sellars. Coach, thanks again so much for joining us today. How are you doing?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it. It's quite an honor to be on your show. And yeah, we're doing great here.
Awesome. Sounds great. And I'm really looking forward to kind of getting into the things that you and your program get into. But let's talk first about your journey, Coach. Where's the game of basketball taking you? Where's your coaching journey taking you? And what led you to White Knoll?
Yeah, I have to kind of start a little bit back toward my high school days, just because the impact that was made on me was by my high school basketball coach, Mark Gerald. And, the thing that Coach Gerald taught us about building a strong championship caliber team with incredible culture was that he treated all of us as equals. And, a lot of people talk about, when you have stars on your team, a lot of people want to focus on those guys and kind of, forget about the rest of the people who might be on the team, whether it be managers or bookkeepers or any of that kind of stuff. But you never would have known that any of us were any different from the next person. And he just valued the fact that he wanted us to be successful in life far more than he wanted us to be successful on the court. But at the same time, he really was a competitive man and really wanted to win. But I think the winning came because of the simple fact that he invested so much time in the lives of his sons, as I like to say, on the basketball court. He did, things that, are unimaginable, took kids in and gave them housing when they had difficulties with their home life, fed so many of us, provided clothes and shoes and anything that we possibly could need, preventing some of our teammates from ending up in jail and doing things that they probably would have done otherwise without basketball. And, so having that experience of growing up and learning from him. I mean, he actually was my T-ball coach when we started together, and we lost every single game in T-ball. But when I got to high school, I told him, I said, before we leave, I'm going to help you win a state championship. And I thought it would look a little bit differently. I thought it would look like me having the opportunity to participate a little bit more, but I had a few health issues that prevented that. And, I still remained on the team. He still kept me as involved as I would have been. And by our senior year, we won the state championship after being down by 18 at the half and coming back to win by 4.
Wow.
And the previous year we played against Eau Claire High School, who had Jermaine O'Neal at the time, and beat them in their home place as one of the biggest upsets in South Carolina tournament history, I think. But then we were up by 10 with 2 minutes to go in the lower state championship against another great team, Holly Hill Roberts, and got down. Or we're up by 10 with 2 minutes to go, and we stalled the ball, and they ended up making some plays and hit a half-court shot to beat us by 1 and the year before. And so for us to be able to get Coach Gerald a title before we left was invaluable. And anyway, he passed away in 2014 from colon cancer, but has just been recently going to be inducted into the South Carolina Coaches Hall of Fame in July. So just got that news yesterday, and I'm incredibly excited about that. But I tell you all that because between having great parents who raised me to do a lot of really good things, both being teachers and coming from a family of educators, and then having that mentorship of his all the way until his passing, is really what made me into the person that I am today and the coach that I am today. And so the way that I got here to White Knoll Middle School, I had been teaching for a few years in Summerville. Didn't really get too active there because I only stayed for 3 years. And then I moved to Lexington. And when I got here, one of the greatest coaches here in South Carolina, a guy by the name of Brett Jones, coaches at Dutch Fork High School now, but he was the head basketball coach at White Knoll High School at the time. And he was looking for a JV and B team coach. And for those of you might call it something different, a B team coach is only made up of ninth graders. The JV can be a mixture. And then of course, varsity can be a mixture. Okay. And so anyhow, the 2 positions were open. And of course, the thing that I was looking at was the JV position because it just sounded more glamorous. And, he met with me and decided that B team position was a little bit better suited for me. And looking back, I'm so thankful that that's what he did, simply because I didn't really know as much as I thought I knew. And what'd you say?
Said I've been there.
Yeah. And I think that what it really taught me more than anything is just having the experience of being in the high school scene and understanding the importance of how much you need to be inside the school, I think, to be able to develop the whole player. At the time I was teaching in elementary school. So, the only time I'm seeing these guys are when I walk in the gym. Right. And, you can't fully develop the type of relationship that you want to if you don't have a constant interaction with them on and off the court. And so that's what I really learned from him. I took that year is kind of interesting. He was going through some health issues and I was dealing with the fact that Coach Gerald was struggling with colon cancer. And so I went to Coach Gerald and asked him if I could start a foundation on his behalf here in Lexington and back in Mullins, from where I was from and where he was coaching, because I was starting to see a pattern of players that just really were making some bad decisions. It was, sure. I started my season as the B team coach with 15 players, and I ended the season with 6. And I didn't kick a single one of them off the team. They made some really significant life-altering decisions that the administration had to make decisions for. And so I started to look, and I carefully watched, and I noticed JV was going through similar issues. It wasn't that they weren't having the extreme issues I was dealing with, but they were having similar issues, and Brett was even having some issues as well at varsity. And I started to look at the whole grand scheme of things, and I started thinking, maybe we need to start sooner. Maybe we need to start working with these kids at a younger age. And so that's why I started that foundation that ended up serving over the course of the 5 years that I was the CEO here in Lexington. It ended up serving close to 43rd to 8th grade kids. We kind of grandfathered it through, and it focused on academics, athletics, and community service. And over the course of that period of time between the two communities, Marion County and Lexington County, we were able to give away $40,000 to our community for various things like scholarships and family situations and things like that required assistance. And all of it was student led. I mean, we just looked for things and ways that we could get involved, and the kids just did a great job of figuring out how we could raise that money and do the things that we needed to do to be successful with that. And then as I grandfathered that into the middle school, it kind of gave me a chance to potentially look at maybe getting back into coaching. And so the last 2 years that I was running the foundation here in Lexington, I coached at Carolina Springs Middle School, which is actually the other feeder middle school for White Knoll High School. So we've got 2 feeder middle schools. We've got Carolina Springs and White Knoll. And so I was there for 2 years, and we had great success there. One of the most games in school history our first year there. And then we had a bit of a discipline issue that kind of caused us to kind of go off the rails right at the start of the playoffs. It was an unfortunate circumstance, but nonetheless, it was the way it needed to be. And so the second year was when I picked up my assistant coach, who has been with me ever since. He actually was a mentor in the foundation. Michelin would send over mentors to read and work with the kids on their homework during the academic hour. And so he actually started to stay for the athletic part, which was just basically like a camp style setup. And so anyhow, he joined me at Carolina Springs for I think we were there maybe one more year, might have been 2, but anyway, what I love about him and the things that he brings to our program and this program as well is that he wants the kids to be successful as well, more off the court than he does on. And so like
awesome.
When we were first year working together, we inherited 7 players, and again, I didn't work in that school either, so you'll see why that matters in a few minutes. But the thing about it is that we inherited 7 kids that were failing, 2 or more subjects. And when I'm talking about failing, I'm talking about like you can't come back from it failing. Like it wasn't like just by the skin of their teeth. Yeah. And so, our rule was, and our rule always will be, that, you don't step on the court until your grades are right, until your discipline's right. And so, we've had kids that we have selected and then put on probation for an entire, first half of the season with the understanding that that's what they were going to be doing. Their parents would understand that's what they're going to be doing, but understand that they would be coming to practice, but their practice time would not be on the court. It would be off the court working with Coach Phillips. And so literally our first half of that season, and this was most of our starters. I mean, we could have easily probably ended up first in our division again and, playing for another championship opportunity. But we, 100% committed to their grades, and more so he committed to it. And so he was tutoring 4, 5, 6 guys until each one of them got their grades back on track.
Wow, that's a
And
lot.
by the time we got to January, he had every single one of them back to passing. And the thing about it is that, we set up incentives, positive incentives. We always are trying to look for the positive in these kids. They already get the negative enough. And so, we want to make sure that we're giving them incentives and letting them know why we think what they need to do is important off the court. And so it got to the point where, and this is such an incredible feeling when you can get your kids to buy into being, truly student athletes, is that they started to celebrate, like, they would come in and show a grade, and like, I wouldn't have to say, let's, clap, give them applause or whatever. Like, they were like giving high fives and stuff to each other because we had developed that. And then finally, when the last guy finally got his grades completely right, and we were back at full strength, you could just see that shift in confidence. I mean, because so much, I tell them all the time, I said, I can go in your classroom and I can watch you perform in class. I can look at your grades, and I can tell you what kind of player you're going to be before you ever walk on the court. Because I said, it is almost identical to how you perform in the classroom as to how much 100%. You're going to give me when you get on the court. And so anyway, fast forward to, the time that we had there, we ended up deciding to take some time away again, because I was trying to make some decisions on, what my next steps were. And so we took some time off, and I was really invested in what I was doing at my school. I'm all about team stuff. And so if you can get me involved in a mission and a vision and a good leader, I'm going to follow, and I'm also going to be willing to lead. And so we had been working on something for 9 years over at the school that I was working at to build more independent learning for students and help them to be owners of their learning. And so
that's awesome.
So that was really a priority for me. And so I wasn't willing to go anywhere and teach at a school at that time. And so I waited a couple of years, and then my principal decided she was going to retire. And so now my mind shifted, because I knew, we had met our goal at the school I was at. I had fulfilled my loyalty to her. And now it was time for me to revisit where I go next. And so the white knoll position was, fortunately open, and I gave the principal a call, and literally he was, greeted me with open arms, and already knew a lot about, because I had tried to get the job over here before, but he had a rule that you couldn't be the coach unless you worked in the school. And so that's what prevented me all that time from ever coaching here. And so I called him and I said, look, I'm willing to come. I said, whatever you got available, I'll take it. And I would like the basketball coaching job. And so he was kind enough to find a spot for me on his staff, and then of course give me the job. And so that was really the beginning of what it really took to start to build the whole student athlete, because once I was able to get in the school building and I could see them every day, and
so that's huge.
Relate with them in a way that wasn't always about basketball. I could keep an eye on their grades. I could keep an eye on their discipline. They knew they could, they had me in class sometimes. And so they, I was just able to develop, the standard and at its fullest. And by doing that, it really led to a lot of success on the court. And so, so that's what got me here. And, the thing I have to tell you, and I think I shared with you the website, but the things that are on the website that deal with the community service and the things that these kids have done over the past 3 years that we've been here.
Yeah.
I get so much more excited about those things than I ever do about us winning a championship or anything of that nature. And people think I'm crazy. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm one of the most competitive people that you'll ever meet. But
Of course. I
I
get
just
that.
feel like, when you focus on their life, when they know that you care about them, that you're not a pawn in your Hall of Fame career, then they're going to, eventually do the things that are necessary. They're going to end up, wanting to do the things that are necessary to be successful on the court. So I really look at that last. And
Mhm.
so anyway, hopefully that wasn't too much information, but
It's
that's just how
it paints
I
a
got here.
well, no, it paints a great picture. And as you left off with the incredible work that your players do, and as you mentioned, just how much meaning you get out of that, and how much you get out of that in particular. And I think that one of the really interesting parts of that for me, and for those listening who coach at a high school or even at the collegiate level, is may have lost some sort of sense about what it was like to be at the middle school level, and are probably just curious about what do middle schoolers in particular like go through, and what do we maybe not know as people who have not been in the middle school for a while, or some maybe haven't ever coached at a middle school level. What do you think our listeners might not know about, your responsibilities at the middle school level, or even what players themselves are kind of going through as they're kind of reaching that middle school level, looking to get into high school in the next year or two?
Yeah, I think one thing I'll say, the relationship that a middle school coach has with their varsity coach is extremely important. And I say that because you've got to kind of have an idea of what their expectations are going to be once the player gets there, but you also have to have a relationship so that the players can have a relationship, if that makes any sense. And
Sure.
so a lot of coaches, I think, no matter what level they're at, can sometimes zone in on their program and forget about the scaffolding levels that, eventually culminate into what I consider the more important wins, which is at your varsity level, at your, collegiate level. And so as a middle school coach, that's what I really am proud of, is that, we have an outstanding relationship with the varsity, and we know what they expect, and their expectations match our expectations. And so it's not like you've got that unbalance of what you're sending them to, or what they're going to get from you. You have that cohesive unit there. But then as far as preparing middle schoolers, I think that's another thing, is you kind of have to check your ego at the door. Again, at the end of the day, I'm a very competitive person, and no, I don't sit around and think how great it is that I lost games because I was doing, X, Y, and Z off the court or whatever. What I mainly realize, though, is that my job is not to win games. My job is to teach these young people how to be successfully independent learners and successfully independent athletes. Because if they get to the high school level and they haven't learned that, or at least have some sort of grasp of how to do that, especially with the high school like we have. I mean, we've got 3 high schools in our district with 2,500 kids or more. So,
Wow.
when they're leaving a school of 700 and going to a school of 2,500,
Big ocean.
you can get lost in the mix pretty quickly. And when you look at it from a student athlete perspective, I mean, you've got massive number of student athletes. So you can't begin to, pay attention to every little thing like a middle school coach can. I mean, every day I can, check their grades. Every day I can meet with them. Every day I can, make sure they're staying out of trouble. Whereas, a high school coach who's trying to, teach classes, and in this case, our varsity coach is a guidance counselor. I mean, he's working nonstop all day long. So for him to, be, following them around like I do kind of, is not
Right.
ideal. And so,
No, that makes sense.
so I look at it from the standpoint that my job is to truly develop them, as students, and as people, first, and then, through that, teach them the type of work ethic that it requires, to be a great and successful student and person. And then what I've noticed is that when you do those things, then that translates over to the basketball court. And so, but again, like I said, we set up goals, we set up rewards, we set up things that are, going to constantly spend time positively reinforcing, the behaviors, and I tell them from the get-go, I don't get my kicks out of punishing kids. So like, don't put me in a position where you tie my hands, because otherwise we're going to work through things, we're going to learn things, and we're going to do it together. So I think, that's the biggest thing, is that that you really show them that you love them, and that you teach them how to love each other. We spend time at the beginning of the year as well, building a shared vision, building a code of cooperation. The shared vision is centered around what we expect the season to look like, and how we expect, us to represent ourselves when we're out on the court, or we're out around the school, or wherever.
Mm-hmm.
And then the code of cooperation is simply how we expect each other to act and perform when we're in practice and when we're on the court. What do we expect it to look, sound, and feel like? And, in doing that, that they learn to love one another, in a way that, I don't care if my stats, don't show up right now. I'm in middle school,
Yeah, sure.
it's more about, I try to tell them, I don't care if you win games for me. I care if you learn how to win games, so that when the time comes and it makes a difference, meaning when you're in a varsity game and you're trying to win a state championship, or, when you're being recruited and you're trying to like impress coaches, what do those things look like? And so, so I don't know. I feel like I'm talking in circles. I might need to stop and let you ask another question. But I think the thing that, I think most people need to know about being a coach at the middle school level is that, there's so many things going on in their lives, and they're trying to navigate this whole idea of, I'm still a kid, but I'm becoming a young adult, trying to figure out where those parameters are, trying to figure out where my independency is and where my dependency still is. It's just kind of a, it's a really neat age to be a part of.
Yeah, I'd
I
agree.
believe it's where the true shaping begins. If you don't shape them in middle school, and help them navigate those waters, I would venture to guess that your high school programs are not going to be, very successful, or they won't be as successful as they could be had you had them sort of, shaped at an earlier age. So,
and I think a lot of high school coaches, I mean, they can probably tell right away at any level, like nationally, what middle school a player went to by the time they get in their program. Like, it's really obvious, like, oh, I know where you went to just by the way you carry yourself, the way you act, the way you play or perform. I think a lot of high school coaches can easily pick up on where those players come from.
yeah, I agree.
Mm-hmm. So we kind of touched on it, but I'll kind of frame this in a question to kind of put it all together there about philosophically, when you think of your definition of like a complete student athlete at White Knoll, what are the things that you and your program kind of hold the most important, and what do you and your program do to kind of help build that complete middle school student athlete? So as if I was to have my kid go into your program, what would I be able to kind of expect out of them, or what are sort of the things you do to help build that out of the players that come through to you?
Yeah, the thing that we emphasize to them and to their parents, we're about to get underway here in the summer, and one of the things, I mean, I've only been here. This will be my third, fourth year, but I've only had two summers to do something, with them, and so the what we've created is a situation where, when tryouts come out, we've got 40 to 60 kids that come out to try out for basketball, and likewise when we put out that interest, in the spring and ask how many of you are interested in playing for us, we get about that same number. And obviously I can't work with 60 kids in
Yeah,
June. And so what we've narrowed it down to, and what I want to get it to, and I think maybe this might be the year that might click, but COVID kind of screwed us up.
Yeah.
So it might take another year. But what I'm trying to get to is a year where we have flipped the culture in terms of them understanding that the way that you get the opportunity to work with us in June, because I usually will keep 20 to work with, because we're required to have an entire seventh grade team in our district, and then we can have what's a mixture of a seventh and eighth grade team. And so so typically you end up with 20 kids anyway, and so that's about what I like to go with. And so what I do is I get the interest. I tell them exactly what I expect. You need to have good discipline. You need to have good grades. And then what I let them know is that your talent comes last. Because if you cannot do the two things that I just said, then if you look at our team rules, you're not going to probably ever play anyway. So there's no point in me selecting you to sit the bench. And that's another thing I tell them, when we do tryouts, is I say, I'm going to take the kids that are going to play. Like, I've never taken kids and not played them. Like, I'm not a coach that believes in, especially in middle school. Now, when you get older, I totally see it differently in terms of, once they get at the varsity level, maybe you do sit the bench a good bit and don't get to play some games or whatever. But when you're in middle school, you either should be playing or you should be, working on your game at the recreation department or wherever, and coming back and trying again, because I just think that is a real important thing for middle schoolers to develop confidence. And so you immediately deflate that confidence if all they're doing is sitting there and eating popcorn during each game. So
yeah, especially at the middle school level, like you said.
Yeah. So that's what I tell them. And so the way I narrow down to the 20 is I actually utilize my PE teachers, which one of them is the head volleyball coach and the other is the head football coach and athletic director. And so they're usually good shots at telling me, folks that I can look at and consider as some talented kids that are coming up through the sixth grade, because the sixth graders aren't allowed to play yet. So I'm trying to always figure out where my sixth grade talent's going to come from. And then, of course, I've got my kids that are potentially returning, and I say potentially returning, I always let them know too, every year is a new year. So if you violate the things that we've said are our standards, you're just as liable to, not playing as
Right.
as
Nothing's
anybody else.
guaranteed, so to speak.
Yeah. I mean, we start over every year. And so anyway, so yeah, that's the thing that I'm trying to do. So what I'm going to do is, go through their grade after I get that interest, and find out all the kids that are interested. Then I'm going to go through and, do a thorough examination of their grades and discipline, and then narrow it down from there. And then once, if the number's still over 20 at that point, then I'll just have to make some decisions. And I always tell the ones that I don't choose out of those 20, if you want me to, talk with you or meet with you and try and help you work on some things, I'll do that. Because again, it's middle school. You're still trying to learn. So,
Of course.
we're not going to end anybody's career in middle school, or at least we shouldn't. And so yeah, that's the kind of culture I'm trying to develop with the summer thing, is that you've got an incentive after the season's over, if you're a player, and you've got an incentive all year long if you're a rising seventh grader to, prove to me that you can handle yourself well off the court, in the classroom, and discipline wise. And then you'll give yourself a shot at working with us over the summer. And I also let them know that if you didn't do what you were supposed to do to be able to have that shot, if you were somebody I probably would have picked had you done what you were supposed to do off the court, that doesn't eliminate you from my mind. And I don't think I don't have any ill feelings or bad thoughts about you. I don't think you're a bad kid or any of that. It's just, you need to understand that these are the things that are going to help you continue to play basketball.
Mhm.
Because I've told them so many times too, I said, guys, listen, I was like, these are not my rules. Discipline and grades are not my rules. The rules are made for you from now until you end your basketball career for whatever reason. So, if you want to continue pursuing basketball in your future, you have to have discipline. You have to have grades. You can't do it without those two things. And I said, the people that you see on TV that may seem to get away with bad discipline or bad grades, you can count them on your hands. Like, for whatever
definitely
reason,
the exception.
Yeah, I mean, for whatever reason, those guys, found some, roundabout to be able to still do what they're doing and not have one of those two things. But eventually that catches up to you too. So, I mean, so I just try to get them to focus on the fact that you need to be the best student in the classroom with grades and discipline. So, carrying over to when we finally get to tryouts, again, everybody who is interested, everybody who wanted to play, good grades, bad grades, and different, everybody gets to try out. And again, I go into that same process. I ask again at the beginning of the year, how many of you or who of you are interested? And I go back through that whole process again, checking their grades, checking their discipline, watching them. If they play football, I watch them carefully play football, and see what type of teammate they are. And I just watch those types of things. And then, we get to tryouts, and, this is where the rubber meets the road, because, when we have tough decisions, I mean, when we get it down to 25 and I've got to get it down to 20, that's when we pull out the grades and the discipline, and we sit down with each one that might have an issue with grades or discipline, that we're thinking, okay, this kid could, average 30 points for us. But at the same time, the problem is that, they're constantly in the office, or they're constantly failing classes. And so we have a conversation with them, and at that point, try and decipher, if they're the type of player that is going to be somebody that we can coach and we can mold, and who's willing to maybe sit out a first half of the season to get their grades right. I mean, because there's no eligibility stuff that we go by in middle school. So,
Okay,
I
so it's
mean,
kind of your standards.
yeah,
Stuff,
yeah, all of this is stuff that we expect. And so, you know, as far as, you know, now if they were to fail a year or whatever, I mean, now there's eligibility, you know, for that. But I'm talking about, like, you know, in high school, it is more stringent or whatever. And so we're just trying to
Sure.
get them prepared for those scenarios. Like, they don't need to wait until they get to high school to figure out that there's a deadline that I've got to meet to get my grades right.
Yeah, yeah, I
You
agree.
know, and so that's what we're trying to do. We're really trying to simulate what high school life is going to be like and hold them to those standards so that they go ahead and build that muscle memory of, this is what I got to do, this is how I've got to do it, you know, this, that, and the other. And so so yeah, I mean, and like I said, you know, we involve parents very, very heavily. I mean, I know a lot of coaches prefer to shy away from parents, you know, for various reasons. And, you know, but our thing is that we're a family. And so if we don't involve parents, then we're missing part of that family. And obviously that is their family. But what I'm saying is that when they're with us, you know, they're to me, they're our sons. They've been entrusted to us to be held accountable and held to a standard. And so, so yeah, I mean, that's the main thing, is that we just want to do everything we can to support them. But at the same time, as we're supporting them and making these decisions, we want to involve the parents as well. You know, and even when it gets down to, you know, tryouts and trying to make tough decisions, sometimes we'll get parents involved in that as well, just to say,
Oh, really?
look,
Huh.
you know, these are the things that we're seeing. You know, I had one kid a couple years ago, and it was coming off the COVID year, or is that little, you know, in between sort of thing where we were doing sort of like a hybrid thing or whatever, but we were starting to get back to playing sports. And,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah. A little awkward period. Yeah.
yeah. And so here I have a kid who, you know, is really struggling doing it virtually. But then, you know, I'm looking at his grades and I'm noticing that since he's returned to school, his grades have picked up. And I'm talking to his teacher, who was teaching him virtually versus now teaching him face to face. And, you know, they're saying, nah, this kid is like, you know, he's really trying hard. He just, you know, the virtual thing just wasn't his, you know, his thing. And so, you know, I said, well, we want to keep him. Would you? And we involve the teachers too. I mean, I asked the teachers sometimes, would you be all right if we keep this kid? I know how you feel about him, but, you know, would you be okay if we do X, Y, and Z where their grades or discipline are concerned? And so, I mean, I'm serious. Like, there's nobody that I can think of that can have an influence on this child that we don't involve. Like, we involve every single principal, everybody, because we want to make sure, again, you can't develop the whole child, because there's no way you can possibly know one single human being in every aspect of their life. And when you got 20 of them to keep up with,
A lot to manage.
yeah. And so it's extremely important that you're relying on not just your intuition, but you're also, you know, taking into consideration how other people feel about the child being a part of the team and what that'll, you know, do for them one way or another. And so yeah, so the teacher was like, yeah, I think he'd be a huge asset to your team. I think he'll come out, you know, as far as the grades are concerned. So I sat down with Mom. I said, Mom, you know, I think he's got a lot of potential, and we want him on the team, but, you know, we have a standard here, and his grades aren't up to where we want them to be. And he's agreed that he'll get them up to where we want them to be. And so we want to put him on academic probation, which means he'll practice with us. I actually stay with them every day after school. And we do study hall, and our teachers are phenomenal here at White Knoll. about coming in, and if they've got a kid that they know is struggling in their class, you know, they'll come in and sit with the kid and work with the kid to get them straight at that time. And so and that's another really important reason why building relationships with your teachers and administration are so important. I mean, I think at any level, but, you know, especially middle school, is that, you know, when they see that you're not here to just snatch up the best kids to win you ball games, and that they understand that you really are about developing the child into a successful person, then they're going to go to lengths that they might not have gone to otherwise. And so yeah, so I mean, so that's what we agreed to. The kid agreed to it, mom agreed to it, and actually kid had his grades up before the probation period was over. And so we said, well, what are we waiting on? I mean, you've done what we asked you to do. How do you feel about dressing out? And the interesting thing is too, you know, and this is probably unique to the kid. I mean, not all kids probably would have reacted this way, but he was very much in favor of going ahead and starting to dress out. And mom was very excited, but you know, he didn't feel prepared to start playing games yet. And so, and I, you know, he directly told me, he said, I'm excited about dressing out, but I don't want to play it. And I was like, okay. I mean, you know, like, you've been practicing and I feel good about it, but again, you know, it's all about listening to them. You know, I mean, you know, I don't have any, you know, we've gone an entire, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 games, and, you know, he hasn't been a part of it. So I completely understand why he might be a little nervous about coming in and, you know, just, you know, hit the ground running. And at the same time, I mean, why not ease him into it? I mean, it's, you know, again, it's middle school. It's not varsity, you know. I mean, if it was varsity, I'd say, you know, you probably should more ready to get going. But you know, it's all managing that. And, you know, he kept his grades up the rest of the time. I mean, actually didn't have any more trouble with his grades at all. And
that's excellent. Good.
So yeah, I mean, so that's what we really try to instill. I mean, and like I told you, we built that shared vision and code of cooperation. And a shared vision I teach them is something that we should be able to remember. So, you know, we want to keep it to, you know, 3 to 5 words. And so this year, after we, you know, gave all our thoughts and ideas of what we wanted our team to look like, you know, we narrowed it down to 3 words: respect, uplift, and compete. And we applied, and all of those were application words for the things that fell within our code of cooperation. So, you know, and we expected those 3 things to look the same on the court and off the court, because, again, we want them to be successful in life more than anything. So, so yeah, I mean, doing those types of things, emphasizing the community service piece. You know, we do promotional nights where, you know, we honor our teachers, and they have to
well, that's unique.
Yeah, we have the kids select from any aspect of their educational lives one teacher that they think's made the biggest impact in their life. And in doing that, what they do is they prepare a personalized video for that teacher and record.
Oh, wow, that's really neat.
Why they selected that teacher. And so what we do is we keep that private. We send that to the teacher. We post online, you know, on social media. We post, you know, like a Hollywood sign for the teachers and recognize them.
Well, they must love that. The kids and the teachers. Yeah.
And then when we get to the game, the players make tunnel. We do it opposite. So like the boys do it during the girls' game, and the girls do it during the boys' game. But we make a tunnel for those teachers, and we call them out like the Chicago Bulls.
Oh yeah.
And so they go out to center court, get a hug, get a picture. And, so we really emphasize, and when we have a teacher section as well for our entire faculty and staff to come and to sit in and cheer for the kids. And so anyhow, we do that for girls and boys. And then we do other things like cultural diversity night, where we celebrate cultural diversity. We just, and what I try to emphasize there is making sure that the kids, as part of our respect part, is that we want to understand and be aware of our cultural surroundings and the diversity that is within that, and to be able to respect one another, no matter what circumstances that might entail. And so trying to work through things like that. We obviously do a cancer night and recognize somebody in the community for that. But, we just do a whole lot of things. We make it a priority that during Martin Luther King's birthday, when we're supposed to be on holiday, that day, we call practice on that day, but instead we do a community service project in the community to honor Dr. King and just remind them of how important giving back to others is. And so, yeah, I mean, I just think, as many ways as you can teach them to think beyond themselves and help them understand that being a part of a team or managing your own life is being a part of something bigger than you. I think when you can get them to that point and they can see outside of themselves, then, the sky's the limit to how far your team will actually perform for you once they get on the court. So, I stand by, my coach always said to us, and I, stand by it, is that, whatever you do off the court is what you're going to do for me on the court. And so, there's no need for me to bring you on the court until I know what I'm going to get from you off the court.
Yeah. And because people that, I tell players that when you're on the court, you represent the program, and in a small sense, also you represent me too in the decision making that I make, right? So
That's right.
there's a little bit of that goes into it too. And just with all the different nuances and all the things that you mentioned, just how thorough your answer was, I'm just curious for you in a personal standpoint as a coach, how do you kind of balance the ever important, X's and O's stuff with all of the other things that you're building with your program? How do you sort of manage your time and make sure that you're kind of covering both and doing it to the best of your ability?
Yeah, I think, I don't know that many people would say what I do is balance my time. And the reason why I say that is, I practically live with these guys. Like until they, until they no longer want anything to do with us, Coach Phillips and I, and now we've added a third coach, Coach Nordone. Both of those guys and myself are all about, the relationship part of it and wanting to continue to help them see success. And so, we've told them, as long as you want a relationship with us and we can help you, like with references to college or jobs or whatever, or just be there in a time of crisis or whatever, we're always, a phone call or text away. And so, once I meet them, unless they make the choice to no longer maintain a relationship going forward, which, knock on wood, we haven't had that happen so far. If we've lost contact with them, it's because they've moved away and we lost contact that way. But, that's what we want to do, is we want to be able to develop that kind of relationship. So, and when the season starts, my wife is, I have to I have to give a shout out to my wife and kids.
There you go. Yeah.
Just because, that's another piece to the puzzle, and another piece to the relationship puzzle. I mean, because I'm not saying you have to have a great spouse to be able to be a great coach, but it helps a whole heck of a lot.
Sure doesn't hurt, huh?
Because, first of all, you've got to have someone who's understanding of where you're spending your time. And then the other thing is you've also got to have, at least I feel like, a buy-in where they are able to build a type of relationship with the guys as well. So, we do a lot of stuff throughout the season that gets all of us together, and my family included. And then my son's, coming through now. He's going into 6th grade. So, he works out with us. So I get to spend a good amount of time with him just by him being the age he is. But so yeah, I mean, I lost my train of thought. What I was trying to say though is that, to balance the X's and O's, is, my day looks like when the season starts, my day looks like, as soon as they get out of class, they come to the classroom. There's a grant that we get in our school district, that will get them snacks and drinks, for free. And so I tap into that grant. We'll give them about 15-20 minutes to, kind of wind down. And then I offer it up, for them to get any homework or assignments done with my help, or, the help of other teachers. And then, we go for an hour on that. And then we spend 45 minutes doing character education. So, we talk about how to use social media. We bring in people from the community to talk to them about various things that they're, going to be going through or have gone through. And then that takes us right up to practice at 5:30, and we go from 5:30 to 7 practicing, and then we let them go. We do that, Monday through Thursday, depending upon whether we have games, and we don't do all that on a game day. On a game day is just a game day, but through November we get all of that in, and then when December rolls around, we hit games. Whenever we're not playing games, we do that regiment, and then Saturdays we do the same thing. We do a little character ed on Saturdays for about 30 minutes, and then we get into an hour and a half of practice and turn them loose. And so they have Fridays and Sundays off. And then, over the holidays, like I said, we give them adequate amount of time off, because, that's another thing that I preach to them is your family always comes first. So, whenever they tell me, I've got to go to my dad's this weekend, there's no punishment for that. You
gotta let them go.
Yeah, I've got to, we've got a vacation planned, and I need to, you need to go. My grandma's in the hospital. You need to be with her. Like we don't punish kids for putting their families first. And we model that for them too. When our wives have birthdays, or our kids have birthdays or whatever, we take practices off as well. And we make sure to let them know what we're doing while we're not at practice. Even with our jobs, my job doesn't affect it, but the other two guys don't work in school. They work, for businesses. And so, they have times when they have to be out of town for conferences and such. And so, we make sure that they understand, you got a commitment called a job, you have to go, and so we just try to make sure that they hear and see as many simulations of what their future will look like, in order for them to kind of take hold of it, and be able to do it on their own. Because like I said, once they get to that high school level, it's going to be hard for them if they don't know how to independently manage most of it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's a good learning experience to learn that at the younger levels so that they're ready for it, because the responsibilities only increase as
yeah,
they get older, right?
yeah.
Yeah. So I'd be curious for just at any level, before we hit our concluding segment here, because that flew by. I'm curious about advice you would give for coaches who might be looking to build, a complete student athlete or really work to build that sort of culture in their program, whether it's at the middle school level or at the high school level. What do you think are some, whether like non-negotiables or absolute musts for a coach who's either looking to build that in their program or even like rebuild that within their program, that whole idea of having complete student athletes walk out the door?
Yeah, that's a great question. I really think, you know, and I've said this all my life, I mean, this is with teaching and with coaching, but my thing is that, I always try to put myself in the kid's shoes. And I know I'm 42 now, and I know it's been a long time since I've been in middle school, but what I try to do is I try to imagine, what are they going through? What are some things that they're literally facing? Whether it be by actually talking to them and knowing that they're going through these things, or just observing in general what you see, trends that are happening in society that they may be you know exposed to and not know how to deal with at the age that they're at. And so that's the biggest thing, I think, is trying to put yourself in their shoes and trying to imagine if what you're doing within your program is truly simulating for them what life is going to be like going forward. And trying to sort of, I don't know if people are checkbox people, but if you're a checkbox person, I think it's really important at the beginning of the season to sit down and kind of just think about what is going on in our world right now, what are kids facing right now, and then even having those personal conversations with the kids, not intrusive conversations, but just sit down and have real conversations. What's going on? Like what's been happening? Just a conversation that gives them the chance to kind of share some things that they're doing, and then trying to involve those types of things into your everyday practice plan, if you will. I mean, and when I say practice plan, I'm suggesting that from not just your practice time. Now, if all my assistant coach has asked me before, because he actually took over for me this year, and I actually was the assistant coach just so that I could have some personal time to kind of regroup and rethink. And I think that's really important for a coach too, is that sometimes it doesn't hurt to allow your assistant coaches to have a little bit more freedom to get some
Empowering for them.
experience themselves, just because it gives you a chance to kind of take a back seat to feel what it's like to be one of them. And also it helps you get a bigger perspective on your kids. It gave me more time this year to get to know the group that now I'm going to be back head coaching this year. And so so I guess I guess the non-negotiable, if I would even call it that, is that you just really focus on what is it going to take to help this child be the best person they can be, and literally look at them as an individual and not collectively as a team. Because you've got, I guess, a balance you could talk about is balancing when you need to have the individual conversations that are only going to apply to a certain situation versus when you need to have the team sort of things. Because like all kids are dealing with how to use social media appropriately. Not all kids are going through losing their grandmother. You know what I mean? And so like, you have to kind of figure out where that balance is. But yeah, I mean, I would say without a doubt, the main focus needs to be on that child first. And then, all that other stuff that they think they're there for, which is, basketball, is going to naturally take its course. I mean, because, really and truly in any sport that you play that's a team related sport, teaching a team to care about each other enough to win is, I think any team sport is 90% psychological and 10% talent. I mean, because if you can't get you put five superstars, you look at these super teams or whatever now in the NBA that can't win championships, and you're thinking, how in the crap can you have like an Olympic team in the NBA and they can't, win but 30 something games? I think that's the point, is that, if you don't spend that time on the forefront of building the relationships, helping them build relationships with each other and helping them think beyond themselves, that you're wasting your time with X's and O's, because you could draw up the best play that gets them all alone on the other end of the court with nobody around, and they'll still miss the shot just because you didn't spend that time. So
yeah, I've been there.
I really think it's 80% relationship building and standards, putting in the standards that you believe are with helping them navigate the world, and 20% basketball knowledge. Because if you're fundamentally developing them and they leave you a better person, and as far as basketball is concerned, can fundamentally understand the context of which their next coach will talk to them in, then you've done your job as a middle school coach.
Yeah, no, it's job well done. If you,
and I would think, I know our varsity coach says that, having that kind of setup is the most ideal, because he's not spending all his time on how to be a teammate. He's spending all his time on, how to win ball
the basketball stuff going.
And I mean, he's even hired himself. One of his assistant coaches is a character coach. Like, they're responsible for character lessons. They're responsible for checking on the grades and making sure that they know what's going on. And in the event that there's something that the coach doesn't have time to fully get to know about, that coach can be there to say, hey, coach, you might want to pull so-and-so aside. They're going through some things. And then, it's just, I don't know. I just think it's a good policy to have that in your program, because once you get further up the ladder, like I said, it's not that coaches up the ladder don't want to have that kind of time with their kids. It's just,
it's harder.
It's harder. It's really, logistically and everything else, it's just harder. And so, if you can go ahead and prepare them, then things will be, I think, smoother. So yeah,
absolutely. No, I agree. I think when the higher levels, and they can just focus more on the basketball side of things, they already come with good character and good work ethic, and they can just focus on the basketball stuff like that. That's like a dream, I think, for coaches, for sure. Looking back on your coaching career, Coach, as I wrap up with a couple questions, what is a coaching moment of yours that, looking back on, you could talk about that you think others listening would be able to learn from?
The one that stands out in my mind is, and again, this is not even to do with a game, but in a way it is. I had one of my players. We talked about how we have taught them to celebrate, their grades, and we had a player who had to sit out a game or two because of their grades, and they were working really hard to get them pulled up. And I can see it like it was yesterday, but the kid made an A on, I think it was a math test, I believe, math or science, and they came flying into the gym. I got an A, I got an A. And that was going to be the grade that put them back, into the lineup or whatever. And I mean, I thought the kid was going to tackle hug me. And so, and we celebrated that as a team, and the kid was able to dress for the next game. And, the rest, was history. That we didn't have any more trouble with the grades there. And, but, it's stuff like that. I mean, that just,
That's awesome.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. You can't put a price on that. You just really can't, because when you see them developing into grown men, and taking ownership of themselves, yeah,
Yeah.
it's just
I mean, you still
incredible.
remember it vividly there, I think like that stuff you remember so much more than, games or game situations. I mean, I'm sure the look on that kid's face is something you'll never forget.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
no, that's awesome. To wrap up, Coach, I give every guest what I call like a soapbox, or kind of like a platform to get out like your closing thought, a closing message, a closing idea, whether it's related to the topic or not. I'll leave it up to you, but I wanted to give you that platform just to kind of leave the listeners kind of with like a closing thought of yours or a message to leave them with. So I'm just gonna kind of let you take the floor, and I'll kind of let you take it from here.
Well, I appreciate that. And, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but, the bottom line to it is that I hope that there's every coach in America, I hope, cares as much about their kids. And I say kids because they still are kids. It doesn't matter what age they are. Even if they're collegiate players, they're still kids until they've graduated and moved on. But I hope that they're always focused on that child and looking at them as an individual in a way that that child knows that no matter how much they contributed to your personal success as a coach, that they were valued as part of the team, and that they realize that even when they leave you, that they can always come back, and they can always know that they have somebody that they can rely on and depend on going forward, no matter what their circumstances bring. Because, at the end of the day, sports is only going to last you a certain period of time. And so, what you do for that child is far more important than what they do for you. And I feel like, and I know it sounds cliche, but the bottom line to it is that I feel like every year I leave, I feel like they've done so much more for me than I could ever have
Yeah,
thought about doing for
of course.
them. And so, I just always want to know and be able to look myself in the mirror at night and say that I did my best to develop them and make them better men, better fathers, better sons, better husbands in the future. That one day they might come back and say that hey, I really appreciate that that I had the opportunity to be in this program because it taught me so much. Because that's what our coach did for us. I mean, my high school coach did that for us. I mean, we never wanted to be away from him. We always came back, and even with this induction, I'm looking and expecting a whole bunch of us to be there in support, even though he can't be. And so that's what I'd say is that love your kids, get to know your kids, get to know their families, just build relationships that are lifelong and not season long. because that's really, in the grand scheme of things, what's going to make the world a better place, and that's what we're here to do. So yeah, that's what my soapbox would be.
And that's a great way to leave it at. And I've just been writing stuff down and jotting ideas and gathering things the past hour or so that we've talked, and there's a lot that I know I personally took from it, and I got a whole few pages written down here that I'm going to kind of bring back and reflect on, and I know our listeners are probably in the same boat with all the great stuff that you and your staff are doing. So I just want to thank you for spending some time just really going into what you and what your program does and your coaching philosophy, and just the incredible things I would personally say at the middle school level in particular, in the way that you work to get your players ready on the court and off the court for wherever their basketball journey is taking them. So personally, Coach Sellars, thank you so much for spending some time talking about you and your program, and hopefully it's a safe and healthy season next year, and you can get right back at it and keep doing the great things that you're doing. So thank you a lot, Coach. Really, really do appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate it too, and thanks for having me on. And if I might say one more thing, it just crossed my mind, is that I don't want to leave our listeners thinking that I told you that I am competitive, and so I don't want to leave our listeners thinking we lose every game and get all A's. I do want to show you a quick translation, and then I'll stop talking.
Let's do it.
But when we took over the program here, the first year, the team, well, not that team, but the school itself had won 8 games in 5 years total. 8 games total in 5 years. And so that first year when I walked in and we set our team goals, it was just to win 8 games. That's all we did was try and win 8 games. That's all we wanted to do. But we wound up setting a school record that year for team wins with 12. And we won the first division title, and the first one in school history that year we won the division, and we played for the conference championship. And the team that we lost to, we in the regular season had lost to by 31, and we lost to them by 3 in the championship. And then the following year, we won the division again, and we won the conference championship, the first one in school history. And then last year was our 3rd straight year with double-digit victories. We got bounced in the second round to to the feeder school that also feeds into the high school that we feed into. They went undefeated and had a fantastic season and fantastic team, and were just a little bit too much for us. But even still, we got 3 double-digit win seasons in a row, and so I just wanted to say that as well, not to brag, but to show you that you can
do it both. You can have both.
Well, yeah. I mean, when that I'm not lying to you is that if you get the part right off the court, the rest of it is going to take care of itself 100%. And so, because I will not sit here and tell you that I'm Coach K. I have so much more to learn with the X's and O's of basketball in general that it's not even funny. So I wouldn't contribute anything more to the success of our program than what we've been able to do off the court. But I did want to let our listeners know that, I'm not sitting around here with 0-16 seasons and celebrating just academic victories. But if that took place, I still would be as enthusiastic about it as ever. But I did want to show you the translation. So sorry
Excellent. No, I think that's excellent that, hey, you can get both things done. So, hey, have a great season next year and just keep reaching those new heights, Coach. Keep at it both on and off the court. Sounds awesome. Best of luck.
All right. Appreciate you.
And thank you guys so much for listening. This was another edition of the Basketball Teacher Podcast. We will see you guys next.
Thank you for listening to another edition of the Basketball Teacher Podcast. Make sure to connect with us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, or reach us directly through email at basketballteacherpodcast@gmail.com. Take care, be safe, and we'll see you next time.